welcome each and every one of you here to the December edition of our monthly Ńkàtá Ụ. This is actually our last Ńkàtá for the year, and we're so happy. We thank God who has kept us and brought us this far, and we thank each and every one of you who have stayed with the center, who has been attending Ńkàtá since the beginning of this year till now. We're so happy to have you. And as you already know, the conversation today is going to be a really interesting one. We know that our Ńkàtá topics usually cut across different areas: politics, tech, business, entrepreneurship. And today we'll be talking NFTs and the metaverse. And I'm seeing a lot of young faces here because we can say these are the ones who get it, the tech bros and techies. So I'm so happy to have all of us here today. Without wasting time, we're going to start with just a very short opening performance, just to set the tone for today's conversation. And to do that, I'm going to be inviting a very young, vibrant, and very beautiful young lady. Very young. When I say young, she's really young. She's a 17-year-old student who, is skilled in dancing. They call her Dancer Amaka. And by the time she finishes, we'll understand why they call her Dancer Amaka. So ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding round of applause, let's welcome to the stage Edith Chiamaka.
Number. Gonna kiss us. Something by you. I ain't do not no more. What on me? Baby Nokia. Nigi laja duko. Ono la bengu. Do ye mu kwaba. Game kiss us. Egola nekati. Yeah, yeah,
Please, we can do better than that. When Sinobu Amaka the dancer, the girl an entire orchestra, everywhere. Because let's give her another round of applause. Thank you so much, Amaka. That was a very amazing performance. I'm going to do, for some of you, today is actually like your first time of coming to Ńkàtá Ụ. And for those of you who don't know what Ńkàtá Ụ is, or you don't know anything about Center for Memories, the organization putting together this event, I'm going to tell you a bit about the center and the work that we do. So Center for Memories was set up in 2017, and the idea behind the center was, to have a place to document important memories and stories and the history of the Igbo people, to promote our culture and our language and, everything Igbo. That's why the center was set up. And part of what we do at the center is exhibitions. So Ńkàtá Ụ is one of our programs, but it's not the only one. So the center holds exhibitions around, important issues on our culture, our history. So currently, the center has an exhibition on the Nigeria-Biafra War, and then we have another one on Ordinary, Igbo cosmology and spirituality. And the center is located at number 2 Ogu Street, off Umoji Street, Independence Layout, Enugu. So maybe you could just come in anytime you're free to see these exhibitions that we have. Then beyond exhibitions, the center also organizes Ńkàtá Ụ, our monthly distinguished speaker series that brings together distinguished speakers from different fields to talk on critical issues that affect Igbo people and how we can move our region forward. Then we have the children version of Ńkàtá Ụ, Nzukọ Ụmụaka, that holds every last Saturday of the month. And this December, the center, we're introducing a new component to Nzukọ Ụmụaka. So because we've always wanted Nzukọ Ụmụaka to be the real version of Ńkàtá Ụ. So usually when the children come, we hold language classes for them. We use storytelling and games to teach children our culture and teach them morals and how to be, engaging citizens, better citizens, how to engage better in the society, in their communities. But this December, we're introducing the Young and Engaged Speaker Series. It's going to be for children. It's just like Ńkàtá Ụ, but for children. So we're going to have select children come on stage and talk about issues. So the theme for this year's Young and Engaged Speaker Series is Opuriche, what makes the Igbo child unique. So we're going to listen to children. So we are so used to telling children what to do, how to think, how to behave. But have you ever wondered what children would say if we give them the voice and the platform to share the brilliant ideas that they have in their heads? So we're going to be hosting that. So it's going to be coming up on Sunday, the 11th of December. And you are all invited. It's not just for the children. We also want the adults to come and listen to children talk as well. Then beyond Nzukọ Ụmụaka, we have other programs. We have our monthly book clubs for adults, and we also have for children. Because the idea is we want to catch them young. We want to raise a generation of Igbo children who are not just grounded in their history, and they are also proud of their identity. They can speak the language, and they are proud to identify as Igbos. And that's why whatever we're doing, we always try to target children. We try to include children in what we do. We make documentaries, we host memorials, and a couple of other programs that we do. Thank you so much. And for Ńkàtá Ụ, so Ńkàtá Ụ started in 2018. The center was set up in 2017, but we started Ńkàtá Ụ in 2018 because we wanted to have conversation around those critical issues that affect us. They can Igbo. How do we move our regions forward? What can we do as individuals, as young people? How do we mentor the young generation coming after us? How do we pass on the baton, for posterity? And that is why we hold Ńkàtá Ụ. We've had other speakers in the past. The inaugural edition, we had Professor Chidi Odinkalu, and he spoke on Igbo Kunye. And then we've had Chief Nyawodo, we've had Dike Chukwu Merije, we've had Professor Philip Effiong Jr., we've had Chika Unigwe, we've had Chika Odua, we've had Chinenye Mbauzuku, Frank Nweke Jr., and a couple of other speakers. We've also had Mr. Obi Asika. And today, we have in our midst another very interesting speaker. I say he's an Ijele as well. I describe him as Ijele. And interestingly, Mr. Osinachi, who is our speaker for today, is our youngest Ńkàtá speaker ever. Please, let's put our hands together for him. So I guess his bio is already being projected there. But for those who don't know, Mr. Osinachi, so today we are talking NFTs, and Mr. Osinachi is a Nigerian visual and digital artist. He is known for using Microsoft Word as his medium. Described as Africa's foremost crypto artist, Osinachi is regarded as the first African artist to have his work digitally auctioned as an NFT by Christie's in Europe. Osinachi entered the crypto art scene in 2017. In 2021, Osinachi garnered attention for selling $75,000 worth of NFTs in 10 days. Osinachi partnered with the Mohammed Amin Foundation to release NFTs for a catalog featuring 2.5 million photographs and more than 5,000 hours of video content. The project launched Afrofuture, an Ethereum-based social currency. Osinachi's works has been described as engagingly political, drawing from conversations on gender, tradition, and race. And we're so happy and honored to have Osinachi in our midst today to deliver the December edition of our Ńkàtá Ụ, and he will be speaking on the topic Igbo Gadi, NFTs, Metaverse, and Igbos, and the future of Igbo culture. Ladies and gentlemen, with a resounding round of applause, let's welcome to the stage Mr. Osinachi Jacon Igwe. All right, please, those of us at the back, please, can we fill up the seats in front? Please, thank you.
Ndị be anyị mma nọ Igbo nwe m ndewonu. Aha m bụ Prince Jacon Osinachi Igwe. Ya na-akpọ m Osinachi. I'm an NFT creator, I'm a digital artist. I make visual art using my computer. I was born and raised in the city of Aba, in 1991. And I did my primary and secondary schools there in Aba. My university education was at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, Ebem Goro Library and Information Science, combined with English and Literary Studies. Yakam Mechal now for 2014, and then in 2016 I worked at the University of Nigeria as an academic librarian for 4 years before I started doing art full-time. I want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. Ihanyi, who is the Executive Director of Center for Memories, and the members of his team for the effort they've put into making this event happen today. Yesterday was another story altogether for me, as someone who was coming in from Lagos, and then the Nigerian factor almost made me not come in. But Ekele dịrị Chineke that I'm here today to have this Ńkàtá with you people, to have this discussion, so that we can talk about the way forward for Igbo culture. And thank you all for showing up. So, without much ado, I will get to it. It's going to get a little technical, I must warn you, but we'll break it down as much as possible. We'll understand it so that we can all go home with something. It's quite a hot seat I've been put on by the Center for Memories to be the youngest speaker at this event. I think my first ever experience of Center for Memories was it 2018? I was still in UNN then as a member of staff, and I was here. The speaker was coincidentally talking about arts, right? And it was beautiful to hear, beautiful to see Igbo people having this conversation, which is really very important for us to have today. So, sorry, I'm trying to connect to my network. Is there a hotspot I could connect to? Okay. Usually mine connects automatically, it's over there. Okay, wait. Okay. Oh, yeah. Full. At Gmail. Okay. Give me just a little time to get this set up. Okay, okay, that's connected. Okay. Can I have that? Keyboard. think I'll just make do with your laptop because the network is not strong enough to open my PowerPoint here. All right. Is that strong enough? Okay, yeah, I can work this. All right, so here we are. Igbo Gadi, NFTs, the metaverse, and the future of Igbo culture. Akọwagom Onyembo. That is the next slide. I've always been a day one fan of Ńkàtá Ụ. So we talk about the web, which is where everything is happening at the moment. When the web started, we had the web 1.0 or web 1, which was mostly read-only. On web 1, you could just read texts. There was no way for you to interact with this text. So web 1 was like buying a newspaper, but in a digital form. So you just read only, you read, and that's it. When we came into web 2, we started having a sort of interaction in web 2. And that is what you might call the social media age, where we started having Facebook, pop-up, Twitter, pop-up, Instagram, and the rest of them. On Web 2, as a user of the internet, you could interact with another person. So someone makes a post and you can comment below, right? You can comment below and do some other forms of interaction like and all of that. Now, even though not many of us have connected so much with Web 2 as we should, the truth is that we are now moving on to the next iteration of the web, which is Web 3. So the world isn't really waiting for anybody. We are now moving to Web 3, which is what we mean when we talk about the idea of collaboration and decentralization. So while in Web 2, we had companies like Facebook, which is now Meta, and this other big tech dominating the space. Web 3 is more about giving power to the people. So it's user-centric. There is a focus on decentralization. So you don't necessarily need to work with this big tech to have access to what Web 3 offers. And then in Web 3, we talk about blockchain, right? We talk about the blockchain. The blockchain is a very important aspect of Web 3. We talk about token-based economics. We talk about decentralization, like I've said before. So what do we mean when we talk about Web 3, actually? Let's go back to what we mean by NFTs. What are NFTs? NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens, or if you want to define it in a very basic way, you can say they are digital assets. Digital assets. They are basically assets that you own that live on the internet, that live on the blockchain, right? They are blockchain-based. They are valuable, even though mostly what we are doing in the NFT space is mostly speculative, and at this point, people are mostly experimenting. NFTs can be applied to various aspects of our lives. We talk about visual art, we talk about music, gaming, real estate, fashion, literature, so many things. I always say that whatever you think about, then you can make it as an NFT. So NFT is basically when you have something that is digital, could be a photograph, could be a video, could be a 3D file, and then you put it on the blockchain. You put it on the blockchain. Now, when you put it on the blockchain, the process of doing that is called minting. You've minted an NFT. Now, when you put it on the blockchain, it has become an NFT. Someone might also ask, what is the blockchain? The blockchain is like a ledger of records, right? So it's like the typical Igbo businessman who collects an inventory of what he has in his shop. And the records are there in his big book. Now, that big book is the blockchain. On that blockchain, you see that this Igbo businessman bought a carton of biscuits, so and so dates, and for this amount. And it is immutable, which means it cannot be changed. So when you put an NFT on the blockchain, it cannot be deleted, it cannot be removed. The only thing that can be done with that, which is what we do in the space, is called burning. Burning an NFT means you've sent it to a wallet where nobody can see it at all, but then it still exists on the blockchain, right? So the blockchain, things that are on the blockchain are immutable. Examples of NFTs. NFTs encompass collectibles, like PFPs or profile pictures. You know, when we started downloading WhatsApp, everybody was talking about profile picture, right? You have Facebook talking about profile picture. Now, Web3 has made it possible for you to actually own that profile picture. If you've been using Twitter for the past 2 years or so, you will have noticed that there are people whose avatars on Twitter are photos of monkeys, or they're actually cartoon photos of monkeys, or photos of heads that you may not really understand. Now, those things are actually NFTs, right? And Twitter recently brought about a feature whereby you can, for legit reasons, show that you own the NFT you are using as an avatar. Now, one of the most popular, or two of the most popular NFTs in the space, collectibles in the space, are Bored Apes and CryptoPunks. CryptoPunks is actually older than Bored Apes. And when these projects, like for example, Bored Apes, less than 2 years ago, minted on the Ethereum blockchain, people bought it for as low as $100. But right now, the floor price of your average Bored Ape or CryptoPunk is as much as $100,000, $200,000. So those who bought it a few months ago when it's minted are actually sitting on real value, even though that value at this point is speculative, right? There's also crypto art, which is mostly what I do. By the way, I have a collection called Across the Face, which is a PFP or avatar project also. But primarily, I make crypto art. And crypto art is basically your fan art, which is existing on the blockchain. Just your fine art, which is existing on the blockchain, even though I make my art using the computer. There are also wearables when we talk about fashion NFTs, wearables. People are always talking about the metaverse. That is one of the biggest conversations we're having at this point in time. And the truth is that one way you can explore the metaverse, I will come to talking about what the metaverse is about. One way you can explore the metaverse is actually to enter as an avatar. It doesn't matter whether you are using a VR set, a virtual reality set, you put it over your eyes and you are able to see the world you are in, the metaverse world. You enter as an avatar. Now, you don't enter as a naked avatar. Your avatar has to wear something. that is where fashion NFTs come in, right? Right now, Meta, which owns a metaverse world called Horizon, former Facebook, they are working with creators to have a marketplace where people can buy wearables. So when you enter Horizon, that metaverse world, you know you are wearing something. Now you can buy it on their marketplace and you own it. That is yours. You can also resell it. The creator makes money. Meta also makes money. There's also music NFTs. Music NFTs is one of the types of NFTs that are at this point gaining popularity in the space. There's crypto literature. Go on Twitter and check hashtag crypto literature, and you see people experimenting with how they can put literature, written text on the blockchain and have people collect and actually own these things. Then there's document NFTs where people are talking about putting documents on the blockchain, right? And they are NFTs, and those documents are actually safeguarded on the blockchain and can be transferred to other people on the blockchain. Actually, 1 or 2 governments in the world are trying this so that they can put official government documents on the blockchain so that it stays there as NFTs. Maybe for the case of transparency, because what you have on the blockchain, anybody can see, even the NFTs. Now, there's a projection by VMR that by the year 2023, the NFT market will be worth about $231 billion. $231 billion. So there are companies that are emerging focused on NFTs. There are creators like myself who are creating whatever they're creating, whether it's music, whether it's visual art, whether it's literature, whether it's fashion, and putting it on the blockchain. With all these activities going on, what you have actually changing hands is money, right? Investors are investing in these companies, believing in them, in their potential, even though what we're doing at this point is mostly speculative and experimental. So on the slideshow there, you can see some PFP projects on the top. The first one is called Across the Face, which is a project by me. The second one is called Afro Droids by a Nigerian artist. The third one is the Bored Apes I talked about, a picture of cartoon monkeys that people are buying, which some people might see as ridiculous, but in their own sense have value, monetary value to them. And the last one there is CryptoPunks. Now below it are examples of what you might call crypto art. The first one is by an artist called Chuma Anabado. He's an Igbo artist. The second one is by an artist called Jesse Oranta. And the third is by myself, a piece called Traversing, which is currently being auctioned through a collaboration with a museum in the US. Now, in the last ones there, you have digital fashion, or what you might call wearables, which I collaborated with a company to create. So as an artist who creates, I designed the patterns, and these patterns were used by a 3D artist to actually create these digital fashion. And the last photo there you have is an example of a metaverse space, a metaverse world, where you can enter as an avatar and explore what is happening. Now, let's come to the big word, metaverse. Metaverse is such a buzzword now that Zuckerberg, in his wisdom, when they were trying to find a name for Facebook, and it was ingenious of him, they actually decided to take the name Meta, which is like they want to own the word metaverse. They decided to go with the name Meta. Because right now, they are focused on Web3. We've moved beyond the time where they are creating services or features for Web2. We are now in Web3. So Meta, as a company, are now focusing on, for example, you who use Instagram, using your Instagram as a means to sell NFTs. So the same way you post your photo, now someone can buy that photo, right? But it depends on the value that you carry as a person. Now, what is the metaverse? The metaverse is an internet and or blockchain-based world where people can interact with other people and products. And these people enter the metaverse world as avatars. We've always been talking about avatars, right? And some people might say that it's not a new thing when you talk about the metaverse. For example, if you're a fan of PS4 or PS, maybe PS4 or 5, whichever one you play, for example, you can buy a video game and then you are entering into that world of the video game as an avatar, right? But the difference now is that this is happening in Web3. And you as a person, you as an avatar, you have more advantages. You can earn through what you do in the metaverse. You can support others through what you do in the metaverse. You can collaborate with others through what you do in the metaverse. Often, the metaverse is not exclusively accessed with VR. I mean, I've talked about VR and AR, augmented reality and virtual reality. Sometimes there are words that you need to access using VR. For example, Meta's Horizon. But some other examples of metaverse words like Decentraland, CryptoVoxels, Monaverse. You can use your laptop right now or even on your phone. Just type the website, for example, monaverse.com, and you can enter into that very word without the need for a VR, because honestly, VRs are currently very expensive, and there are companies that are working to break that barrier so that people will be able to afford VRs in the future for cheaper prices. NFTs can be traded in metaverse world, like I've mentioned before. And I've mentioned examples of metaverse words. There is CryptoVoxels, there is Decentraland, there is Mona and Horizon, which is owned by Meta. Now, I've talked about an avatar. I'd like to show you an avatar I created in collaboration with Mona. This avatar is called Mado. I decided to name it Mado because I feel that that is what an avatar is. Even though it cannot feel pain, there is only some little things that the avatar can do. For example, in terms of showing emotion, maybe dance or jump up and whatever. But I believe that with time, we'll get to the advanced state of the avatar in the metaverse, where there'll be other things that the avatar can do. Basically, your avatar might actually, as you are interacting with someone in the metaverse, your facial expressions are also being expressed by your avatar. And that would actually make it even more immersive. So this is Mado, which I created. A friend of mine posed for this. And it was made into 3D by the team at Monaverse. This avatar will be available for people to buy on Monaverse by next week. So I'm going to mint this avatar, and you as a person can enter the Monaverse metaverse and actually buy it and use it as a black person, as an African, as an Igbo person, to represent yourself so that people will actually know that you are Igbo. So you can use Mado to explore monaverse.com. Now let's get to the crux of the matter, which is the culture and heritage of Igbo, where we are at the moment. Like I said before, my academic background is library and information science and English and literary studies. So as a librarian, I know what cultural institutions like museums, galleries, and others are facing when it comes to promoting what they do. Cultural institutions like museums are facing a paucity of funds, negatively affecting conservation and preservation, and even manpower. I co-founded Afrofuture DAO, and Afrofuture focuses on helping cultural institutions put their collection as NFTs on the blockchain and share it with people so that people can buy. That way, the institution is making money. Still, that way, the institution is sharing its collection beyond the physical space that they are in with other people. Now, by making money, they are able to even carry out other things. One of the problems that Muhammad Amin Foundation talked to us about that they had was that they didn't have enough money for the digitization team to come in from outside of Kenya to work on their collection. Now, imagine putting the little that they have on the blockchain and making money through that, and then people are able to put money into the wallet of Muhammad Amin Foundation, and they, in turn, can use that money to actually carry out this very important thing, which is called digitization. Because digitization is one way for you to preserve your collection. For example, if you have very important documents, over the years, they will get brittle and probably you would lose them if you don't digitize them. So digitization becomes really very important. Heritage sites and resources such as mosques, architectural buildings are sometimes physically distant from those willing to explore them. Now imagine an Igbo family living in the US. Imagine that they have a kid, and this kid wants to explore their heritage as an Igbo person. And then they want to come down to, say, Ogbunike Cave, or they want to come down and explore the War Museum in Umuahia. That would cost money. They would have to book their flight. They'd have to take care of other logistics, which has, of course, financial implications. But then, if the content of these heritage institutions are actually put in the metaverse as NFTs, this person who wants to explore their Igbo heritage will do so comfortably from where they are. Now you might say, what is the difference? In Web 2, we have institutions who are creating websites so that people can look at the collections that they have. Basically, what you're doing when you're looking at the collections that you have in Web 2 is to click through. You click, you see this mask. You click, you see this photo referencing the Biafran War. You click, you see this. There is no element of interaction. When you talk about augmented reality would allow this person who is in the US to actually lift a mask in the metaverse of a particular cultural institutions and interact with this mask. You can check the bottom of the mask, you can check the top, you can check the side, you can see the different colors. Probably you can even try it on in the space, and it feels like you are part of what is going on. It helps in the education that you're actually looking for as an Igbo person. And honestly, we have a lot of education to do in Igbo land. Most cultural events, such as Ofala and Diri Johor, are still restricted to the physical space. So when we talk about Ofala, people have to fly in from different parts of the world to take part in Ofala. When we talk about New Yam Festival, people have to come from another part of the world to be a part of Diri Johor. But if you are to bring this event to the metaverse, then you have something even more exciting in the space. It would be that a child who wants to learn about Ofala would enter the metaverse and not just be a part of the Ofala or the region horror in the metaverse, but also interact with others. For example, if you enter Horizons, owned by Meta, you will be able to interact with other avatars which represent other people in the space. So this can even take care of the thing about dating, where Igbo people would say, I live in the US and we don't have so many Igbo people, and then who am I going to get married to? Maybe I should look for a white person, even though that is not what they want to do. So connection happens through that. Can I get some water, please? Cultural institutions also, like museum, they are facing inadequate government, inadequate government support. facing inadequate government support. In other parts of the world where it seems things are moving on well, it's even difficult for museums to access funds. It's difficult for galleries to access grants. It's difficult for even artists themselves to access grants. But then, when you come down to Nigeria, you can imagine that it's even worse here in Nigeria, because our government, they are not done with the responsibilities. They've not even started dealing with the responsibilities for which they were elected, not to mention prioritizing cultural institutions. So there's no government support, really. The best you can get is that you invite a certain minister or commissioner, and they come in person, show their presence, and then leave. And that's about it. No financial support. There's also inadequate engagement with the community, leading to a low level of appreciation for Igbo culture among young people, which is why I love the idea of Oporiche, which the Center for Memories is putting together. I feel that Igbo people have to be taught right from when they are small, right? Reading Igbo history, you'd understand that when when they are going for meetings, when they are going for Ńkàtá, when they are going for Nzuko, they always have a child by the side, mostly a male, who is carrying their stool. In Igbo culture, that male, that little child, is called Munye, which is like an appendage which goes with the man. And then wherever the man is going, the Munye is carrying the stool for the man. And when the man gets there, the Munye sets the stool. But now, when you ask most of us here, what is Munye in Igbo? They would say wife, but really it's not the only definition of what you'd call Munye. If you go back to what our ancestors used to do, which is similar to the history of the Greeks, you'd understand where the idea of a Munye comes from. Now, let's come to recalling Igbo culture and heritage using Web3 and NFTs. I use the word recalling because we've come to a point where we are trying to meet up with education. We are trying to meet up with teaching our children what they are supposed to know, with even teaching each other what we are supposed to know. It's mostly a wonder these days for me to see an Igbo person who speaks a whole sentence without an English word, right? That person deserves to be lifted up high. So we come to a point where we need to recall, we need to stand where we are and look at where we are coming from and go back. And from there, carry on. Custodians of Igbo cultures have the following opportunities in Web3. You have the opportunity to reach younger generation of Igbo who are more in tune with Web3 and the opportunities that it offers. What we are building at this point in time in Web3, yes, we are experimenting and we are speculating, but we are doing it for our children and our children's children. Because you, as an elderly person, you might not really fully appreciate what NFTs are, especially if you're not in the space. You will only appreciate it more when your child starts telling you about it. And then maybe 5 years or 6 years from now, your child might ask you, where were you when others your age were collecting NFTs? I see some joke on the internet where some people will be like, they're asking their parents where they were when they was on Azani. So where were you, father, when others were fighting over pieces of land to take? So maybe 10 years from now, the question will be, where were you when others were collecting NFTs? Because you collect now, and you can pass on to your kids. Your kids can pass on to others, right? That is how it is. So the opportunities are wide. The opportunities are big. 10 years from now, I start to imagine, it's difficult for you to even imagine how the NFT space will turn out to be, because one day in the NFT space is like 365 days in the real world because there are new ideas coming in, there are innovations coming up that people are actually doing and trying new things so that we can build the space. Another opportunity is to renew interest in Igbo culture through collaborations in Web3, as we do with Afrofuture DAO. Now, like I mentioned, Afrofuture DAO, what we do is to acknowledge Africa's past in the present and also inspire its future. Now, the past that is about Africa, you find it in cultural institutions like museums and the rest of them. Now we are in the present where we're talking about Web3 and NFTs and the metaverse. And the future is actually young Africans, young Igbo people who can look back at what we have in the past and use it to reimagine the future that we want to see for ourselves, right? So that is what another opportunity that you have. So these young people, they'll look at the collection of, for example, Muhammad Ali Foundation, and as artists, they can reimagine this collection, and from there, create something new. And it's a collaboration between them as artists and the foundation. So the money is split between these two. That is also one thing that Web3 offers you, the blockchain offers you. The smart contract can be programmed in such a way that immediately that money comes in from the sale of an NFT, that money is split between the collaborators in that project. So automatically everybody gets their own share. You don't have to use police to run after anybody to give you your money. Now, another opportunity is to remedy the issue of finance through NFT releases and smart contracts, which is what I just talked about. Also, to build a strong community of supporters who are part of what is happening, irrespective of their location. One big word that we use that is very important to us in the NFT space is community. For example, the community, Osinachi's community, is a community of people who believe in my work, who believe in what I do in the space, who are sometimes collectors or people who love what I do. So the community gets into interactions. They interact with each other, you know, as regards my work. Now, when you build a strong community, which is also something that cultural institutions like museums want to do, because you want, when a museum is situated at a particular place, it is to build a community, to bring that community together through the programs that they have. Now, the NFT space offers you an opportunity to explore that. For example, I'll be collaborating with a museum in the US, and they are looking at using NFTs to build a stronger community, to give a community a sense of belonging. So it won't be just about entering the space of the museum, looking at the art and going out, you know, just living. You have a sense of belonging because you have an NFT that is attributed to that museum. And the museum can also make money through that. Another opportunity is to build a home for the digital versions of their collections where community members will not only be able to see, but can engage with resources. I've talked about the idea of just seeing, which is like Web 2, but engagement, you are engaging with the collections. That is very important, something that you can do in the space. To document Igbo history on the immutable blockchain. An example that I like to see, which is sad, is the Eva Valley Massacre Monument, which you have close to New Market. Now, that monument has dilapidated. You can even use the word rotten, because there's no maintenance being carried out. Now, imagine that a replica of that monument exists on the blockchain as an NFT, maybe in the collection of a museum. Now, 10 years from now, when it will just be like rocks falling off the foundation or whatever, people can still go back to the blockchain, go back to the internet and recall that very monument. So looking at it, explore it, and by exploring it, just know what it is about, know your history as an Igbo person. Another opportunity is to enable education through the metaverse VR and AR would allow for that, irrespective of physical distance. I've talked about this before. Also, to create virtual versions of important events in Igbo land, I've talked about, for example, Ofala and the region horror. We can replicate that in the metaverse, and through that, export our culture, even to other parts of the world. When I released my PFP projects across the face, one of the attributes is the Ohafia walk up, which I'm wearing here. And some white people collected, and they were interested in the history of the Ohafia walk up. What is this cap about? Someone even said I should send one across to them that they would like to wear it. Now, that is exporting Igbo culture through NFTs, telling stories about ourselves, telling stories about Igbo, about Ndi Igbo, through NFTs. Now, even if this person doesn't really understand what it means to have an Ohafia walk up, at least maybe for the first time in their life, they've heard the word Igbo, which is one word I like to put out in the NFT space so that people will be aware of what is happening, of what we are, of who we are, of what we do as Ndi Igbo, of our history as Ndi Igbo, because it bears repeating. Now, there are challenges, or what you might call hurdles, along the way for people, Igbo people, for example, who want to enter the NFT space, right? It is not all rosy, yes. Some people think that once you enter the space, you start packing millions, right? It's not like that. My story is that I've been in the space for more than 4 years now, and when I entered the space, my work was selling for as little as $5, right? $10, $15. So you grow in the space, and it takes consistency because collectors want to be sure that you are going to be there. Nobody wants to buy an NFT that the creator of that NFT is no longer in the NFT space. They've packed money and they've run away, which is what we call rugging. Someone is standing on a rug and then you pull that rug and they fall on their face. A lack of knowledge on what Web3 and NFTs are and how they can be applied is one of the hurdles. And that is why this Ńkàtá today is very important. So that even if you don't learn the deep aspects of NFTs and the metaverse, you would know the basic things and maybe on your own do some research, right? So that you can be a part of what is happening. Another hurdle or challenge is the wrong belief that NFTs are a fad and will soon fade away. For the past 2 years, people have been saying NFTs are a fad. NFTs is a bubble, it's going to burst. But we are still in that bubble. Whether it's going to burst or not, nobody can tell. But what I can tell you as someone who has been in this space for 4 years is that we are still going stronger. Yes, you might not see NFTs that would sell as much as $69 million like Bepo's work sold at Christie's. You might also see an NFT tomorrow that might sell as much as $80 million, more than Bepo's work. So it's speculative, like I say, and we are still experimenting. It could go up, it could go down, but the question is, will it always be there? And the answer is yes. The blockchain has provided digital creators with the tool to create value for their work. Before now, as a digital artist, it's all about commissions, commissions, commissions. One corporate body would reach out to you, you create something, you stay up, making corrections. You make that correction, send it back to them. They will tell you, also, please add this one, do this one. They are pointing out what you want to create. At the end of the day, they are paying you a little amount of money, right? And they own the right to that work. After all that stress, after telling you what they want you to create. But being in the NFT space, you have the freedom because you are sure you have money, as little as it is, to afford breakfast and dinner. And you are able to sit down in your studio or whatever space you're creating and actually work, create the kind of art that you want to make, create the kind of art that you want to see, not what somebody else wants you to create for them. So the NFT space is there. It's not going anywhere. Blockchain is there. It's not going anywhere. Also, one of the challenges is that there's a lack of regulatory frameworks that guide the adoption, use, and trading of digital assets. Like I told you before, NFTs are digital assets on the blockchain. They are tokens. For example, you also have some other kinds of tokens like Bitcoin and the rest of them, Ethereum and the rest of them. So there's a lack of regulatory frameworks, which is making which is making some governments actually afraid of crypto generally, because people often associate NFTs with crypto, which is not always true. You can collect NFTs with your card, your bank card. It's not just about you buying crypto to be able to collect NFTs. No, you can collect NFTs with your bank card. There are marketplaces like niftygateway.com where you can do that. Other marketplaces are working on bringing about that feature so that those who are scared of crypto can actually be a part of what is going on in the space. There's also a lack of adequate funding to start the transitioning into Web3. Now we're talking about cultural institutions like museums being a part of what is happening in the NFT space and using NFTs as a medium to promote what they do, to build a community. But they have to start somewhere. They have to start somewhere, and there's a lack of funding for that. But thankfully, organizations like Afrofuture DAO, which I co-founded, are working with some other organizations to help provide at least this initial funding that cultural institutions can use to be a part of what is happening in the NFT space. For example, we are partnering with Hedera to provide grants for museums in their quest to be a part of what is happening in the NFT space. In conclusion, what we are doing in the NFT space, like I've been saying, is mostly experimental and speculative. But then, indeed, when I say, aga akaraka anayeri nwangworo. So this is the time to actually be a part of what is going on. So the train doesn't leave us behind. Nwangworo would start running 14 days, 20 days before the day of the war. The war will start. And by the time the war has started, he's far away in a safe place. So let us be like Nwangworo Ndibo and be a part of what is happening in Web3. Ndewonu.
Please, we can do better than that. Thank you so much, Mr. Osinachi. Without wasting further time, we're going to go into the Ńkàtá proper. You know, he's said a lot today, and for people who are just, getting to understand NFTs for the first time, is actually a lot to take in. So we're going to take, the next 10 to 15 minutes to actually unpack some of what he has said today. And to do that, I'm going to be inviting our moderator for this, the moderator session. And our moderator is no other than Mr. Ekene Odigwe. Now, Ekene is a lot of things rolled into one. I know I always say that, but he actually is on-air personality, is a brand and communications expert. And, interestingly, he has also dived into the Web3 world. Ekene is doing amazing work, and he works as the programs and operations lead at the very first African Community DOA. And what they do is they help to build a decentralized launch pad for African history, art, and cultural assets. So in his capacity as the programs lead, he's helping to onboard creatives, African creatives, and museums into the Web3 space. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give a round of applause for Ekene Odigwe as he comes on stage.
Ndị be anyị ekene m unu. I've always attended Ńkàtá, and this is the very first time I'm moderating. Funnily enough, it looks bigger from here. I always like sitting at the other part, so you get to listen than speaking from here. But all the same, thanks for coming around. I will try as much as I can to break the terminologies in a way that everyone can understand. I think one of the challenges that we are also working around is terminologies and breaking the linguas in NFT space or Web3 space generally in a way that it's easier to onboard people onto the chain. So I'll work around it. Osinachi, it's always a pleasure to meet you.
Yes, same here.
So part of your conversations is how you kept mentioning how speculative and experimental the space is. And then for someone who is trying to find their footing in the space, that could be a scary factor. So it's unstable, which is also part of the reasons why many governments around the world wanted a centralized system to work with. But NFT works about decentralization and all of that. So how would an Igbo person, Igbo business person, young person, creative generally, tap into that and also being able to fight against the idea that I'm entering into a bubble that is very, very fragile?
Yes, thank you. As Igbo, I think we are even naturally speculative and experimental, especially in business. You try this one, it doesn't work, you try another one, right? That is the experiment. Also, we are used to going with the crowd, and that is mostly what is happening in the NFT space right now. So there's a hype around an NFT, for example, and then you start having what is called the fear of missing out, FOMO, and then you join others to rush in, right? And that is why parents would see a businessman from their village who is doing well, and they would tell their child, Ikemefuna, to go and serve under that man, to learn what the man is doing. Now, Ikemefuna would learn, for example, but also Ikemefuna can experiment when it's time for him to do his own thing. So you have to be someone who loves experiments. And you mustn't really necessarily be someone who loves experiments, because there are people who are saddled with this responsibility of experimenting in the space. For example, new companies that are starting out in the NFT space, right? They are saddled with this experimentation. Now, whatever works, you as the creative can now use, right? For example, Monaverse, as a metaverse word, would conduct an experiment about putting avatars and making the avatar lively enough, you know, whether it's to salute or to dance or to jump, right? Now, when they are done achieving what they want to achieve, you as a creative can now create an avatar and use the features that they've built, right? And create your own thing. So don't be scared by speculative and experimental. That is what life is about. And you might actually get lucky in your experimenting, but experimenting also takes consistency. It doesn't mean that you try one, it doesn't work, you abandon it all. We know about the story of Thomas Edison and the rest of them.
You made mention about being in the space for 4 years. Now, part of that 4 years were the cases where you put out your work. I remember I would come to the house and the work would be hanging, and then we would joke about it. And the consistency, and more so the courage to keep going, even when people haven't come to realize the value NFT, brings to the space. What kept you?
Well, honestly, I would say that I didn't know it would get this big in such a short time. Right? When I started in the space, what we were doing was called art on the blockchain, and then we started calling it crypto art, and then now NFTs, basically the same thing, right? So I just saw an avenue to share my work with a wider audience beyond Instagram. And you have to note that this was a period where I was entering full-time adulting, which meant that I had just graduated and about to finish NYSC. And the whole thoughts are there about what to do with your life. I mean, the option A, which was going back as an academic librarian, was there and was okay, fine. But the option B has to also be available, you know. And my art that I've been making for years, even before the blockchain was invented, was the only thing I could fall back to, right? So I didn't know it would be as big as this. Honestly, I just felt that if I'm able to sell my art and I'm able to put food on my table, that's enough for me. If I can eat breakfast and dinner, that's enough for me.
Now, people might argue that perhaps we've not explored Web 2 to its prime, and there is Web 3. So we are speaking blockchain, token engineering, art, designing an economy. How sure are we that we can explore Web3 to its infinite possibilities?
Let me rephrase that question in the voice of the average Igbo trader. Nah, I mechabe online selling. If you Web3 na blockchain, can you which means that you want time to wait for you. But time really doesn't wait for anybody. Online markets have been existing for years now, right? From Alibaba to Amazon and the rest of them. And then when I know that years before now, even before I got into the university, I had a friend who was working with a company that was going to Ariaria and all other big markets in Aba to talk to traders about being a part of a directory of traders, right? So when we talk about shoes, we'll have a list of those who are making shoes, for example. And not many of them were interested because they believe that what is currently working for them will continue to work for them. And that might be true. But there's a step further that they can go and even become bigger and better. So time isn't waiting for anybody. We haven't explored much of Web 2 as Igbo. Now we're talking about Web 3. Let's also explore Web 3, especially now that it is at this early stage. So we can experiment, speculate, and find out what works for us as Igbo. Because what works for us might not actually, what works for Ndiocha might not work for us as Igbo, right? So we should do that at this early stage so that we know we are part of the global conversation.
The conversation today was about how we as Ndibo can jump into the rabbit hole, right? So that would require knowledge, understanding, and working through the system and finding out how the system works. So you also made mention that Afrofuture DAO, it's reaching out to help organizations and all of that. So for an organization like Center for Memories and for African creatives that also do their exhibition at the center, how will they begin to tap into that?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what we have happening is that organizations and institutions coming up in Web3 are building services and products that they want to use to support other organizations. And these same people in Web3 are the ones reaching out to these other organizations, right? Which is okay at this early stage, but we'll get to a point, right, where you might say the room is full, right? And so it might now get difficult Because I remember when I entered the NFT space and I wanted to get on a curated platform, Super Rare. It was super easy. You just fill the form, maybe answer some email questions, and you are in. But now, for you to get on Super Rare as an artist, 3 years you haven't heard back from them. So that's what I mean by the room is full. So these institutions, I'm always talking about looking for opportunities, which is what even led me into the NFT space, looking for opportunities as a visual artist. These institutions need to learn to go out and look for opportunities, right, without necessarily waiting for the opportunities to come to them. Cultural institutions are basically on their own, honestly. Even though there's an appendage that they are part of government or this or that, they are basically on their own. So those who are running these institutions actually have to be on their feet, stand and look out for these opportunities, because very soon the room will be full. I'm so glad for what Afrofuture is doing by using these initial collaborations as a model for others to see what we can do with cultural institutions.
Okay, before we open up one more conversation, the incorporation of Igbo words into your pieces. Think of an instance with Madu, with Monaverse, then on across the face, the 100 pieces of them, you have pieces, some of them with Igbo elements.
1,000.
Yeah, the 1,000. Then there's also Chuniachebe there, and then there is the heart. So, what drives you? And you also made mention of how you consciously throw in Igbo words, your way of pushing the language, the culture, and all of that onto the chain. Isn't that like huge space?
I mean, naturally I'm Igbo, so it happens naturally, right? And it also has to happen consciously. Do you understand? It has to happen consciously. I think it was around 2 years ago where I minted a work that is entirely, the title is entirely in Igbo. I think you find it on Super Rare. It's called Nwanyị Ahụ Na-Akwa Akwa, right? A seamstress, if you will, or a tailor. Nwanyị Ahụ Na-Akwa Akwa. And that, for me, it's what we as Igbo people should be doing, right? Because the question that someone from Australia or the US would ask is, what does Nwanyị Ahụ Na-Akwa Akwa mean? In fact, first of all, they would make the conscious effort to try to pronounce it. And in trying to pronounce it, you are basically converting them into Igbo, right? And then they want to find out the meaning, which is the next stage, right? And it's very important for us to do that in the space, so that when people see certain words, they want to, it's just the same way that we run to the dictionary to check certain words in English. People who are not Igbo need to ask questions about what certain words mean. Call the next Igbo person by your side and say, what does this mean? That is one way we can also export our culture and tell our stories.
Okay, as part of exploring our culture and telling the stories, will that be the idea behind Africa Here? That's your latest projects? Could you speak more on that?
Africa Here is an accelerator program that I'm doing with one of the marketplaces in the NFT space. The marketplace is called Maker's Place, and it's focused on bringing African artists to a point of spotlight in the space, because I noticed that there is so much noise in the space, which I hate. You go on Discord, the noise is too much. You go on Twitter, the noise is too much. Everybody is talking, and most of them are not conversations that would add positively to what is happening in the space. So when artists enter into the space newly, it's difficult for them to rise above all of that noise for people to see them. So that is why I decided to curate African artists, so that when someone enters the space and asks the question, where can I find African artists? We say Africa Here. This is where you can find African artists. Now, 6 of those artists who are winners of the Accelerator program are currently showing at Art Basel, Miami, which is huge for anybody in visual arts, whether traditional or digital. And that is exposure for them, for people to actually see their work. I think about 2 of them are Igbo, right? And one of them is Chuma and Abado, and his work is very much Igbo, right? And people would ask questions and learn about Igbo when they see an Abado's work, right? So that is very important for us to do. Let us curate, because curation is important in the space right now with all the noise. Curate so that we can spotlight people. Hopefully, Africa here will get to a point where we focus solely on Igbo artists for a particular edition, and then we can spotlight Igbo artists through that.
Okay. Now, how does it feel participating to design an economy? Because when we talk about Afro-Future, now for those of people who do not know, it's not just a DAO. So DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. Think if it was to be IRL in real life, you're thinking of a company. So you'd have this space onboarding and transitioning, not just curators, you're also onboarding creatives and cultural institutions. So in the sense, you are creating a creator's economy, so to say. For an artist or someone who is thinking they might find their footing, how would they go about it?
If you're thinking about finding your footing, right, in the creator economy we have, which is being boosted by Web3, I guess the first step is to enter the space, first of all, right? And then be a part of the conversation, because you can't really know what is going on if you're not a part of the conversation. For example, I hate to use Twitter. I hated to use Twitter. I still hate to use Twitter. But it's a necessary evil for me because that is where some of the conversation happens. So I have to be on Twitter to know what is going on, to interact, to say that this work is available, you can buy it now, for example. That is number one. You have to enter and be a part of the community. And then you have to be consistent, right? It's like when you are walking on a thin layer of ice, right? You've not really found your footing. You're about to sleep. Naturally, you'd keep bringing down your feet to be able to find the footing, right? That is consistency. Now, if you stop doing that, you're going to fall. Probably also, if you continue doing that, you're going to fall, but at least you are being consistent in what you're doing, right? So consistency is key. Like I said before, you don't just enter the space and expect millions instantly. For me, it took years. And also, that is how you build out your value in the space, because NFTs is about value. For example, if Beyonce were to put out an NFT collection today, there's value to it because it's Beyonce. Ronaldo has a collection of NFTs on Binance. There's value to it because it's Ronaldo. Now, if you, as a Kene, were to put out NFTs on any platform or any blockchain, the question is, what value does a Kene have that he's bringing? Now, if you don't have that value, you are in the space, you have to enter the space, then it takes you time to build that value so that people see you for who you are, for what you do, and actually believe in your work. You build that value.
So when people are collecting NFTs, they are collecting the value of the artists.
Exactly. So now that Instagram is saying you can sell your posts as NFTs, the question is also what value? Everybody would jump onto it to want to do it, but what value do they have for people to say, if I buy that NFT, I'm going to make profits from it? Because naturally, people don't want to put their money where it will get lost.
Okay, so we would open up the conversations and allow people to ask your questions, and you get clarifications and anything you might want to, ask. You have your microphone, okay. So we'll take rounds of questions, then he would answer and we'll come back. Okay, we'll take 3 of them, then we'll come back. 1, 2, 3, okay.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Away from some of the conversations that we have had this night, I've been trying to understudy blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and NFT. And as a lawyer, two things have been very important to me that I've sought out expert advice, but everyone seems to shy away from this conversation when I bring it up. The first is that there have been studies concerns around cryptocurrency and its use in funding terrorism. And these conversations are always avoided, especially by people who are into blockchain technology. I want to know from your experience if you feel that this is an issue, and what can you say to allay our fears for some of us who are hoping that, okay, if we can explore these possibilities, but whenever we know and feel that these things are exploited by terrorists, it's a challenge for us.
So let's connect and then come back. Okay. There's someone that raised their hand there.
Okay, good evening. My name is Chinemere, and I just have a simple question, which is, must one be an artist or photographer to be able to mint or produce NFTs? Just, that's my question.
Would that be all?
Okay, let me start with the last question. To be in the NFT space, you have to be either a creator and a collector, or a collector, right? So you have to, first of all, be someone who creates. If you don't create, I don't know what you are bringing into the space. If you don't also collect, I don't know what you are bringing into the space. Unless you are a tech bro who has knowledge about blockchain, maybe blockchain engineering, then you work behind the scene, and that is also something you are contributing. So you have to be a creator. Like I said before, it's open to the creative sectors, as far as I know. Visual art, literature, photography, real estate even, fashion, and the rest of them. So you have to be someone who creates something before you can enter the space as someone who wants to sell something, unless you want to enter the space as someone who wants to buy, which now makes you a collector, or you have technical skills that can be used behind the scene in boosting what is happening in the space. Coming to the first question, the use of cryptocurrency for funding of terrorism. Those who are running away from the question, I wonder why they are running. But the thing is that it is true that this is happening, that cryptocurrency is being used to fund drug peddling, terrorism, prostitution, and the rest of them. But it's also true that cryptocurrency has made me make something out of my life as an individual, right? It is also true that cryptocurrency has made it so easy for people to donate to good causes, right? For example, those who are supporting Ukraine in Russia's invasion of the country, most of them are doing so using cryptocurrency, right? So these things are true. But like I said before, the governments of the world, they don't need to shy away from the reality. The reality is that the blockchain, cryptocurrency, they are here to stay. Now, the only thing you can do is that you can bring about regulatory frameworks around these things so that you regulate what is happening in the space, right? And all of this is coming up. For example, the US, they have regulatory frameworks they are bringing about to bear on the space. Other countries are doing so, as opposed to our own country where the central bank says bank should not process crypto transactions. Now, some people misinterpreted it to mean that holding crypto in Nigeria is illegal, which is not true. It only says that banks shouldn't, for now, process crypto transactions, and that is very much going to change. The only thing is that central banks across the world are scared of the word decentralization because they want it to be centralized. They want to be fully in control. So when you say decentralization, they shake. And that is what Web3 is about, decentralization. We only have to build regulatory frameworks around what is happening in Web3.
Okay, so to add to your question, you're thinking of user cases. So there are user cases, just like Osinachi made mention, where people could use crypto for bad, but at the same time, there are user cases where people use crypto for good. So it's a two-way thing, and everyone decides how they want to use it. And bear in mind, you're thinking crypto, you're also thinking unit of value, medium of exchange, and rest of them as it is in token engineering. Does it make sense?
Good evening, everyone. My question is, first of all, I'd like to say that I really admire your work and your craft.
We didn't catch your name.
Oh, my name is Justin Igwe. I'm a digital marketer. And my question is, what do you think will trigger people's involvement and people that are non-techies, people that are non-gamers, people that don't necessarily have, people that are not going to Web3 to entertain themselves or play or just code or something like that. What do you think will trigger these people's widespread involvement in Web3? Because some people say maybe it will be the reduction in size of the VR sets. Some people say maybe it's education, like there's still a lot of speculations out there. But in your opinion, what do you think will cause this widespread?
So, do we have any other questions so he could take them together?
Good evening. My name is Kelechi. My question borders around the issue you mentioned, the issue around the regulatory framework. Playing in the tech space for a long while, I've noticed that the tech people had this notion that they can build anything without looking at the regulatory aspect of it. And I feel it's time for, if I can use the frame, tech daddies, to sort of find a way, if I can say lobby, if possible, or try to work with the government agencies to draft these regulatory policies. Because if you allow the government officials who do not understand what these platforms are about to draft these regulatory frameworks, it's going to be counterproductive for the tech space. So it will be good for those in the tech space to work with these government officials and see how they can draft these regulatory frameworks for the growth of the space. Thank you.
Any other question? Okay.
Thank you for that last comment, because what our government don't understand, they sort of slap a ban on, right? It's like when they said they suspended Twitter in Nigeria, and then a lot of businesses, most especially of young people, were affected. And when they placed that, what you might call a ban on crypto transactions through banks in February of last year, a lot of businesses were also affected. In fact, there are companies that were dealing with crypto, and they had to move their headquarters to another country. So many of them had to move their headquarters from Nigeria to other countries. And these are companies started by young Nigerians. So you see what it's doing to our space. Now, to come to your question, what do you think would be the driver? You asked what will make people to enter the space fully. I think, first of all, would be education and knowledge of what is happening in the space, right? If you are educated about the space, especially basically as we have just done, then you can think to yourself, what value can I bring to this space? How can I enter this space based on what I do? I was speaking earlier at Center for Memories, And someone said, I'm into real estate, and how can I apply real estate and all that? And I explained it that the metaverse itself is real estate. So you can buy parcels and build structures and sell if you want to sell, right? You can buy, build, and sell, just as we do in our real world here. So it's education, first of all, that will drive people into this space. And maybe you were hoping to hear money. If it is money primarily that drives someone into a particular place, they are most likely going to run out once they enter the space. For example, a few months back, a Nigerian photographer sold an NFT of a drummer man for, was it 1 ETH or so? And also found the man and gave him a portion of the proceeds, as much as 400,000 naira. Now, with that news, so many young Nigerians, I think I heard they started looking for old photos of their grandmothers and all to put out as NFTs so that people could buy. And then that happened, and within a week or two, it died down, right? Because the motivation was, first of all, they wanted to go and grab money, right? If someone had thought and packaged it like, I'm doing a collection of NFTs, of old photographs of Africans. The whole thing is about packaging. And then you create a collection on maybe OpenSea, which is one of the marketplaces, right? And you put it there. You collect old photographs from Obi, and you say, I'll pay you 10% when I make the sales, or 5%. And you put it there. You collect from Mbafo, and you put it there. When someone opens that collection, they see these black and white photographs, and it's a collection you've built. And they'll say there's something here, and they can buy, right? And you actually make that money you wanted to. So people just run in and die. If you go on OpenSea right now, you see a lot of black and white photographs that nobody is buying. And those who created it are not even minting more because they just wanted to collect money and run. And that is not the way to go. So from education to, asking yourself what you can bring into the space, that's how people will basically enter the space.
Okay, to add to your question, the last person. Now, there are two places in the world currently that I know of that the government have come to work around to build more like a law for a legal framework to guide in real life as against the legal spaces you have on the space. For instance, the LLC for Wyoming, and then there's also Spain. In Spain, you can register your DAO, like a decentralized organization with the government, and the government sees it as a non-profit, so the government do not deduct tax from it. But also the government has a way of a legal framework, so to say, of how your organization works. And US, apart from Wyoming, are also working around that. So for people around here, the scare, like you explained, is decentralization. In centralizing, we've realized it also comes with human factor. So it becomes a case of, I own 50%, you own 30%, so I decide what happens, as against operations of a DAO where everyone is part of the governance. So if we are to, for instance, vote for this camera to move here, all of us who hold the tokens would come to vote and say, yes, we want it. Now, if at the end, not like the majority voted no, it would mean that it won't go. And I think that's one of the exciting things of Web3, the trustless transparency, accountability that is laid before everyone. So people get to see how much they have in the treasury. People get to ask questions about how their money is spent. People get to decide on the work. For instance, on Afrofuture DAO, part of the works we did is a collaborative project with 3 other DAOs. Okay, 1 DAO, 2 offline. That's Eat Safari. And then it was about onboarding 21 African artists. And these were street artists in Nairobi. They don't understand anything on blockchain. But during the onboarding, the project was simple. they have spaces that were unused and abandoned. So what do? Clean the spaces, paint the artworks on these spaces, then mint the artworks from these spaces and sell them on the space. Proceeds or part of the proceeds from these artworks are used to maintain these spaces in the real life. So people get to enjoy these things. So it's part of the things people do and how you can work around it. Hope that answers your question. Any more question? Okay, on that note, okay, there's someone. Who has the microphone? Yeah, after this,
Good evening, everybody. I'm Okoye Nobe Chilebelu, and I wish to ask, the education on Web3 on this area of Nigeria is very, very little. And I also wanted to ask this question. When transitioning into Web3, and then you experience failures from NFTs to trying to go into the metaverse, lack of information, lack of resources, how do you get past that? Because it's a depression that I know that everybody in Web3 faces.
Yeah, the thing is that there are so many people who claim to be specialists in Web3, right, at this moment, and some of them are actually, because of the experience they've gathered over the years that they've been working in the space. And what is happening is that companies that have the money are actually hiring what they call Web3 leads or Web3 specialists or whatever term they want to call it, because they want to have a space, they want to be part of what is happening in Web3, and this person that they're hiring is going to be a part of it, right? So I would say the first step of transition is to actually get someone who understands, no matter how little the person understands what is happening in Web3. And that also requires money, actually. It requires money on the part of the institution that wants to do this, because you have to pay the person. And the person would say, tomorrow we want to do this project or we want to do this and we need a budget, and you have to provide the money for that. So the big companies like fashion companies and the rest of them have the money to actually do this, right? So the first step, if you are a corporate body of transitioning, is to get an expert, right? For example, MTN bought a massive plot of land on a particular metaverse world, right? Probably they have someone who is advising them with regard to Web3, right? And that will come in handy a few years from now when MTN will put out an advert on the television and say, to resolve your issues, please go to our metaverse parcel, and then they will put the address there, and then you wear your VR. Hopefully by then it will be easy for you to be cheap enough for you to buy. You wear your VR, and then you enter MTN's office in the metaverse, and then you speak with the customer relations, right? Without needing to leave your house and have your problem resolved. And then banks will follow. In Europe, there are banks that are already thinking about Web3 and how they can have a presence in Web3.
So that will be it. The first thing, transitioning is always the difficult part, but also it is one of the core values Web3 brought to the space. Before now, people hire you and they just give you job to do and dump you. Nobody talks about the onboarding process. Nobody talks about taking you through all of that to make sure you have soft landing. So most communities on Web3 are built around, first thing is the onboarding process has to be solid, because that's the only way you can deliver optimally. And bear in mind, most of them are remote jobs. So they need you to be able to deliver on your task. That's why tools like GitHub and other Web3 tools can help people monitor people's works, open source related projects, so you know when the task is completed, when it reached a milestone, and all of that. So it's all tied to the payments, but it's built around the community. So finding the community that has solid onboarding process will be your first start. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and that will be it. So, Ifoma.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ekene Odigwe. Thank you so much, Osinachi. It's been such an intense and eye-opening session. Thank you so much. So before I call on Mr. Emekamba, who is here to give us the closing remark, I would like to specially acknowledge our partners, our sponsors for Ńkàtá Ụ. It takes a lot to run this program every month, and we're so happy to have people who've been supporting this program for a while now. And we have Afia TV. So Afia TV has actually been giving Ńkàtá Ụ a lot of visibility that it deserves. They've been streaming the program online, so people from different parts of Nigeria and all over the world can actually join Ńkàtá Ụ without needing to be physically here. Urban Radio has also been doing an amazing job. From when we started, Urban Radio has been helping to amplify Ńkàtá Ụ through their radio platform. And then we have Enugu Sports Club that allows us the use of this space that we use every month, and we're so grateful to them. We have United Nigeria. United Nigeria actually brings our speakers, especially those that come from outside of Enugu. They bring our speakers to Enugu for us, at a very subsidized. And then we have Dev East. Dev East also has been supporting Ńkàtá Ụ, providing funding for the program, and have Penguin, who designs all our publicity materials for the event. So thank you so much, everyone who's been here from the beginning of the program till now. I'm going to call on Mr. Emekamba. Mr. Emekamba was our speaker in October. He's the MD of Afia TV, and he's a friend of the center. So he's going to give the closing remark, and then we'll come here and take the group photo, and then we'll dismiss for the night. Thank you. Mr. Emekamba.
My task is very simple. It's to thank everyone who has come here today. But I want to start by obviously thanking the Center for Memories for continuing to put this platform in place for us. This is perhaps, I think, when we look back many years from now, we will see the importance of this conclave, this gathering that we have. So I want to thank the founders and the management, especially the Executive Director of Center for Memories, for continuing to keep faith with this event. My special thanks will obviously go to Osinachi, who I met through a mutual friend, Mr. Obi Asika, a few months back. And he visited our offices, and we had my first deep lesson into understanding what Web3, NFT, and all of that, what it meant. And I'm deeply delighted to catch his presentation and to listen. So I've learned a bit more today, and I'm very honored and proud that he's here. This is important because I can understand a lot of us are thinking, like I was some months back, what does all these things mean? But I think this is really, we're talking about building the future. The technology of the future is really what, whether you look at it as NFTs or there's something fundamental that is happening around the world. And we talked about it previously, how digital has upended the traditional things that we know of. And I think that's the key. Because there's an intersection between art, between technology, between finance, and that's really the key. And in all of this is actually making sure that our culture as Igbo people, that we're not losing out in this new future that's been built. So I'm delighted and honored to listen to Osinachi through his presentation today. And that gives me confidence that indeed, that as Igbo people, we're not going to lose out in this emerging new digital future that we're talking about. And I'm also delighted, and I think I want to thank Kene specifically, because I think he also helps sort of ground some of these discussions. And I'm delighted to listen to be here to listen to all of this. I think it would be remiss if I don't acknowledge our hosts, as always, the Enugu Sports Club, the chairman and the management of Enugu Sports Club for continually giving us the benefit of this great hall. I want to thank them especially. And finally, to thank all of you those of you who are online, who are joining us online, but importantly also those of you who are here in the hall today. I thank you all for listening and for paying rapt attention to, and indeed the quality of the questions that came up today was very, very important. So on behalf of Center for Memories, the Enugu Sports Club, and all of you who are here, I want to say thank you very much, Osinachi, and we'll be looking forward to the next edition. I think you're going on break, isn't it? Yeah, so hopefully we'll see all of you in the months ahead. Thank you all, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
Photo now. But then for some of you who were not here at the beginning, so we announced that we're going to be having our children's version of this Ńkàtá Ụ on Sunday, the 11th of December. So we said, we are used to talking and telling children how to think, what to say, how to behave, but have you ever thought of listening to children talk, the ideas that they have to share? So we're going to be having Opuriche. Some of you saw the flyer at the entrance. The theme of the conversation is Opuriche, what makes the Igbo child unique. And we're calling for entry. So if you have a child who is between 8 to 15 years and who is articulate and can speak to the topic, to the theme, please kindly, you can check the flyer to see how to register to be part of it. And there's going to be lots of exciting prizes for the children. And the event is going to double also as our end of the year program for children as well. And adults are invited, please, it's not just for children. All right, thank you so much for attending the December edition of Ńkàtá Ụ, our last for the year 2022, and we're so excited. So, enough of the talk. So please come forward. We're going to take a group photo with our speaker.